Welcome to With You Podcast,
where we explore relationships and life transitions.
I'm David.
And I'm Tara.
Yeah, and this is the end of our season.
Yeah, I mean,
Ish.
Yeah.
Well, it's a wrap up of Play in Pain.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, because we've covered a lot of ground since. When did this start?
September,
I
think, or August, sometime in the fall.
Yeah.
And we're ending before Christmas. We'll take 2 weeks break, I think, and we'll start up again in the new year. But it's been a good season.
It has. It's been fun. We've gotten to talk to each other, talk to other people, learn some things, laugh a lot. And so given that it's holiday season, I thought we'd talk about home. Because everybody is either going to be spending some time at their home or traveling to someone else's home.
Yeah, home is important. And you came across these studies. So we're going to be talking about what makes a happy home today.
Yes. I did some research.
Well, you found some research.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
that's
true. That's true. No, I did not. Me and my colleagues did not do this research. No. Found some really interesting research at the Happiness Lab.
I know. Well, no, that's different. So there's a book called The Happiness Lab or something about this is by the Happiness Research Institute.
Happiness Research Institute. That's right. Happiness Lab is a podcast.
Yeah, it's a whole different thing. People do study happiness.
There's a lot of focus on happiness.
There's a lot of focus on happiness, and I found that interesting in and of itself.
Yeah. I think, I started out before we got into this thinking happiness is overrated.
Well, we could spend a whole podcast just on the definition of happiness.
Right.
That's a whole thing.
Because it feels like a fleeting emotion that can kind of rise and fall.
Circumstantial.
Rather than a kind of a steady state.
Yeah.
And I think this is thinking about happiness more as a steady state than a rising fall of emotion. It's not clear.
I think you're right. Yeah, they don't define it in these reports. Yeah. We'll be kind of going through the results of these reports on a happy home. And when I first heard this or saw the title, I would think like what makes a happy home is talking about what's inside the home, like a happy household, like, family life and all that stuff. But this is actually structurally your house, your home. What are good conditions?
The place you dwell in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which is really an interesting idea.
Yeah. Because I don't know if you had this saying, we had this saying, if mama's not happy, nobody's happy in our house.
Yeah. I mean, the condition of the people within it certainly have an effect on our happiness.
But that's not what we're talking about.
No, but I mean, people are focused on happiness. When I do a lot of work with families when they're waiting for a baby, and what most people say is, I don't care as much what they do with their lives, just as long as they're happy. Everybody focuses on that. That's the ultimate goal, is that we be happy. And I think when we say that, we just mean generally functioning well and content with life. Yeah, basically, right?
Yep. And I think about that, bringing baby home from the hospital. We spent a lot of time like baby-proofing our house, of thinking about the structural, how things work, and having to adjust the environment for the survival, if not flourishing, of our child. And that's kind of what we're thinking about, just not about that newborn stage, because I think then we forget about it, although we do still have some baby.
I've just had to revisit that now that we have a grandchild. I've been looking around going, it's time to start over with baby proofing. When she gets mobile, we gotta think about this. But that goes into the safety part, which is one of the points. But just to say what this is, because you found this and thought this would be fun to talk about.
Yeah.
It is called the Good Home Report.
Yep.
There's actually 2 studies we're looking at. One is a Good Home Report that was done in June of 2019. So I think this would be interesting if it was done during or after COVID as well. How would that affect what makes a happy home environment?
We all spent a lot of time. Yeah.
So whatever they found in here was definitely highlighted during that time. And then the second one is called Happy Home Learnings from Row House Typology. This was done in 2022.
Yep, post-COVID.
And specifically on structural design and how that relates to our thriving in our home. So we're going to kind of go through these report findings, and I think some of them are not what you'd think.
Yeah. And the fascinating thing is none of this was done in the U.S.
Yeah.
This is in Northern Europe
Yeah.
and throughout Europe. So that's also different. Having spent
Yeah.
time here in the US and in Europe, the concept of house, home, the size of it, all of that we're going to get into, I think, as we apply it to us,
I
because it's a
know.
very different
I would
research.
like to see the same study done in the US and in
Hey,
different regions in the US.
do you want to do it?
That's the last thing we have time
Yeah,
for.
we probably should.
I bet we know somebody who could do it.
Yeah, we'll talk to some people.
Yeah, so this was conducted across 10 different countries in Europe, the
Yeah.
first one, and almost 14,000 respondents.
Which is remarkable. I
That's a
mean,
big
that's
study.
a robust, yeah. So it gives us a lot of data to say some significant things about. And so, kind of the idea that we have, they talked about this, that they found in their data that happiness with the home is closely linked to many other emotions and aspects of life. And I thought that was fascinating. And the things that they talked about were feeling at ease and thinking
Yeah.
about feeling safe, feeling connected with others, and feeling a sense of control, or being in control of our environment. So those are the things that they kind of tried to operationalize as happiness. It's kind of comorbid with happiness.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know where we should start with this because there's a lot to talk about. But they did talk about the things that they found. They found 5 things
Yeah.
that they said unite with the data, what unites us across countries and cultures. And I
Mhm.
guess specifically European
Europe, yep,
countries,
the EU.
because it wasn't done in Asia or Africa or the
Yeah.
United States. But the things that they found that united what different countries and cultures defined as a happy home were these 4 core emotions, because they're talking about our emotional health and happiness
Mhm.
as related to our home. So, and they were surprised to find that the number one thing that people said made them happy with their home was pride in their
Yeah,
home. So
that's
pride was 44%. So really outweighed everything else. And pride meaning like I'm proud of this place that I've built, or I'm proud because it shows off who I am.
mhm.
I'm proud what I had to do to be able to afford this, like that kind of sense of ownership. And it didn't matter if people owned or rented.
Right. It's their
It's
space.
their space.
And it didn't matter the size. The pride wasn't about,
Oh, I was getting to that.
oh, sorry. It always happens. So if you're new to us, this is a relational pattern of 32 years where Tara does this beautiful setup, and then
And
I'm
you go
like,
right to the
hey,
punchline.
size.
Oh,
But
Yeah.
I think that pride also has a relation. So I think about these things, and I think relationally more than the internal life. It's the space between us, and pride also has a relational sense. It's usually shared. There's a sense of invitation. Like if I'm proud of my house,
Yeah.
I'm very comfortable having people over. If I'm ashamed, kind of the flip side of pride is shame. If I'm shame, I don't think my house meets up, or I'm not going to have people over. So there's a connection to relational community in how we sense that.
Yeah.
That wasn't part of the study,
No.
but that's
No.
how kind of
That's
I read that.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. What was number 2? So number 1 was pride.
Comfort. Comfort was next, which
Comfort.
that's not surprising.
Yeah.
If we're comfortable in our home, that makes us happy. Makes it a place of refuge, a place where we can recharge before we go out.
Is this where we talk about size?
Let's just go through these 5 things.
Okay. Well, because comfort is what's the Danish word for that? Like hygge?
Let's not try to pronounce a Danish word.
But there's a sense of coziness. In Dutch, it's gezellig. And it's this kind of cozy. We don't have a word in English for it. I think the closest.
Cozy?
Yeah. It's not the thing though. It's like,
Yeah, it's a feeling. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. But comfort also tends to, feeling like you can be yourself, you can relax at the end of a day of work.
Mm,
So comfort was number 2 at 25%. Identity was number 3.
yeah.
of the 5 things that kind of unified this data. And identity, meaning your home accurately kind of reflects who you are, or it's personal. It's, it's a place that, that I guess reflects your identity and who you are and how you want to be in the community.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look on our walls, right, in our house, the identity, we have places we travel, we have things that are about family relationship, that are the artwork and the pieces that we have, or artwork of our daughters. And so, like, when people are in our living room, they experience us.
You love to give them the whole tour and the show and point out the places we've been. And
I'm proud. and it's identity. It's letting them know who we are a bit. And the hard part of that is, though, I think, like, our tendency, our kids would know people were coming over because we would mad dash clean. And we want to present the best we can.
Interestingly, cleanliness didn't come up even at all.
No, not at all.
On this list.
Which I think is fascinating, because I think we sometimes, but I think it's connected to identity, right? We worry about what will people think. And so we have to prepare the house rather than what I like saying is it's okay for it to be lived in. Having people over, but that's an identity issue, I think.
Yeah.
So you might fit on the cleanliness side, or you might fit on the lived in side. Tara and I have to navigate that all the time.
Somewhere in between.
Yeah.
It's good, I think.
Number 4.
Number 4 is safety.
Okay.
So the sense that you really can let down your guard. You don't feel any threats from the outside.
Yeah.
Safety emotionally and physically, I think, is what they attended to with that question.
And this will look different culturally too, because, like, our friends from other cultures were like, why do you have your windows open? People can see inside your house. And there was a sense of safety that we didn't have, that feeling of lack of safety. Or I was amazed in Nagar. Every home had kind of fence and gates around the property. I think it falls into this sense of safety and space and comfort that it's going to look different. And there's not a better.
It's going to look different from neighborhood to neighborhood, even here in our area.
Yeah.
And then control was the last one. And that was a much lower percentage of importance. But control, just a sense of control over your environment, of choices, of, the way it looks, the way it feels, the things that you have inside it. That sometimes speaks to, like, whether you've done improvements, and that also speaks to pride. But those are the 5 top things. And do any of those surprise you right off?
Yeah, I mean, the pride one does kind of, that it's the top. I think identity and comfort would be the first top 2 for us. So I get it, but that doesn't map onto our experience, which I think many people will have a feeling. I think it does. These 5 hits us, but it doesn't hit us in the same order.
Yeah.
So I think that's a surprising thing for me. I mean, how about for you?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised by that too. That I'm not surprised that it's in there, but I'm surprised that it outweighed the others by so much.
Yeah, it's almost 50%.
But I think it kind of, maybe when they speak about pride, all the rest are sort of enveloped in there because it's like I have created this place and now I'm happy with sharing it, and it has comfort and it has safety and I have some control and identity, and that gets wrapped in a little bit.
Yeah,
I think. To the pride piece.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. There's a lot of.
But we do know people who put a lot of pride in just the show of a house. And I think that's where we don't relate because that's not what we have a home for.
Yeah.
In fact, I'd rather downplay it,
Yeah. But I also think, though, these things can change depending on life situations. It can be the same physical space, because I know we have a story about living in community, and the same physical space can be experienced differently based on the number of people you have, the amount of stuff, and the size of it doesn't change.
You so want to talk about size. So let's go there. That's next,
size.
because so that was the biggest surprise to me in this study, because, I mean, especially where we live, size. Okay, so here's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Size doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's right.
To happiness.
No. in in your
in your
home.
home.
Yeah.
The size was not one of the top factors that really related at all
Yeah.
to the happiness, which I think is surprising in our community
Yeah.
because people really don't feel like they can live in a happy, thriving way without a larger home and space for everybody.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of the point, is that it's more about the spaciousness, the sense of space
Hmm.
inside the home.
Yeah.
Because the people who were the highest of all the 10 countries in Europe, highest in happiness, were the Dutch.
Yeah.
You'd be happy to know.
Hey, yay.
And just based on our experience being in the Netherlands, they don't have large homes.
No, it's cozy. It's
For the
gezellig.
most part, yeah. So it's more about the spaciousness and what you do with that space than the size.
Yeah.
So,
And the comfort so that goes back to the comfort and identity of like, if you have, so recently we had children live with us, right? Our kids are in their 20s, and it was wonderful to be able to spend time together. And yet they brought their stuff.
yeah,
And so the size of our house and our stuff with their stuff, and then the college graduate stuff, became less spacious.
yeah,
That the size of our house stayed the same, but the spaciousness was cramped,
yeah.
which made for challenges.
Yeah, they do show that like clutter does reduce your happiness, which that's not a surprise to me. That's always
No.
something I fight constantly. But so just to give a personal sketch of our
Yeah,
home.
yeah,
So
yeah,
we live in a 1950 Cape Cod
yeah.
that we purchased when we moved back to the Midwest and we're expecting our third child. What we'd heard is that people who'd moved out of the house before said there's no way to raise more than 2 kids in this size house.
Yeah, that's right.
We raised 4,
Yeah,
and we've had adult kids return. And recently we had quite a long stretch where our 2 adult kids who are married well, our kid.
yeah. Wait, what?
Wait.
Yeah, let's count this. So there's 3 biological kids.
Our son and his wife and
Yeah.
their dog had a temporary need for space while their home that they're now living in
Yay! Congratulations.
was being renovated. So it turned into a longer stretch of time than anyone thought.
Yep.
And so our home, which didn't change size, did change in spaciousness a
Yeah.
lot.
And maybe a little happiness.
And and I feel like we all did well being with each other, but I think we all struggled with the lack of space,
Yeah.
lack of spaciousness, the lack of, the amount of clutter, just because everything they owned was in our house, everything we owned was in our house,
And we all were in the house.
and we all were in the house.
Yeah. And it added extra stressors, even though relationally it was great. It was fun to have. I kind of miss them. It's only been day 2, but I kind of miss them. And so there was this relational appreciation, and yet it was stressful. And I know this about you. Like, I can tell emotionally the state of your emotional well-being based on the state of our bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of cleanliness, clothes put away, bed made, not made, all of that.
I know, it's kind of symbolic. I wonder how many people relate to this, because I feel like I want our room to be our sanctuary, to be the place where we can hide away and everything's serene. Even the paint color that I painted in our bedroom is called Serenity.
Oh.
However,
You know what?
when
I don't see colors all that well.
I know it doesn't matter to you. That's an interesting thing too.
Yeah.
Color choice, because
Yeah,
people have very different personal feelings on that. But our bedroom ends up being the place that we just hide what we can't deal with.
Yeah.
Which I wonder what a metaphor that is.
Oh man, let's
Let's
all
not go there.
all my psychodynamic friends, please don't leave messages.
I know. But when things are chaotic and our life's really busy, that's just the stuff we don't get to. Sometimes
Yeah.
I'll just throw a pile of papers I need to look through in there, or whatever.
Oh man,
So-
now I can only think about our bedroom as the unconscious.
Oh no.
Oh man. All right.
Well, that's a
Yeah.
discussion
That's
for
another
another time.
episode. Yeah.
But our whole house was kind of like that for a
Yeah.
few months.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
the stuff we didn't have access to was everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so this idea of spaciousness, I get it. And we have our other kids that are married in another state have a beautiful home, and they're minimalists as people,
Hmm.
and it's a comfortable, spacious. It's just a lovely home, and it's a goodness of fit to who
Hmm.
you are, the stuff you have, the space that you
Hmm.
have, whether you experience it. And so, as you think about your home, how are you making it spacious? How are you thinking about spaciousness and space to be and breathe in the place, whether it's an apartment or a condo or a home, or a trailer? How is that? Because there's these, I saw on TV the other day, there's a show about tiny houses,
Hmm.
which we had been reading this, and I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, tiny houses. And it's everything has its purpose, and there's no extra, but they experience it as spacious. It makes me feel claustrophobic just watching it.
Uh-huh.
But that's to that point. A small house that feels spacious can hold your stuff, can be a joyful thing.
Right. And because it's about stuff too. And I feel like in the US,
Yeah.
for us, it's more about the stuff that has to fit in the space. And I think that's part of the problem, why
Yeah.
we feel like we need more space, because I think we tend to accumulate more stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, thinking about that spaciousness, it's something that's doable, and there's a direct correlation to your, happiness, your mental health, your thriving, your sense of, retreat
Hmm.
from the world, of just how you move about the space that you have. And in the second study, which I guess we won't talk about separately, but the study about the row house's design,
Yeah.
the important thing was creating creating space for privacy and for community.
Mm.
So it's important that a space had both,
Yeah.
like places you can be away by yourself, places you can commune with
Yeah.
others, places that you can see your neighborhood. All of that
Hmm.
creates this sense that you can retreat, but you're also connected.
I know we both grew up in families where that bound, and I think about that as healthy boundaries, permeable boundaries of both your folks and my folks. Our parents' bedrooms was kind of the sanctuary, just like
Hmm.
you were talking about ours. That was more of a private space of, yeah, us kids could go and kind of knock on the door, but it wasn't a free range like the rest of the house. So there was
Yeah.
kind of a community. We had that modeled for us. Not everybody does. And so this idea of communal private might be a unique thing.
Hmm.
I've done work in different parts of the country, and sometimes I did home visits for therapy. And one house I went to, I had a long drive in a different part of the country, and had a big orange drink on the drive. And when I got there to the house, I had to use the restroom. So I asked, can I use your bathroom? And they're like, sure. And I'm in the house, and there's no door on the bathroom. And I was like, wait, what? And so then I'm like, is there a different bathroom with a door? They're like, why does there need to be doors? We don't have any interior doors.
Oh, wow.
Because there was a sense of, there was no privacy.
Yeah.
Like the privacy was between the outer world and the family. And I was like, whew. That's something else.
Yeah.
And then the flip
Yeah.
side can be structural, where everybody has a TV and food in their own room and their doors are shut. And so the boundary is between family members, not between outside in.
Hmm.
And so our house is kind of a metaphor. Like, do we have private space? Do we have communal space? How is
Hmm.
that structured? And do you think about it? Because I think we all need that.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do we think about it? How can we change it when it's a struggle?
Yeah. And all of us listening, it's like, look at the space you're living in now. How do you divide that up? And it can be as simple as that, of like, okay, this is going to be the quiet space. So while all the kids and the dog lived here, this right here was my private space.
Well, that goes into adaptability, which is
Yeah.
the second thing. So the study kind of came to conclusions about so we talked about the 5 core emotions that are, that affect whether we call our home happy or not.
Yeah.
But then the things that were kind of the core important things, spaciousness, adaptability
Yeah.
was a huge thing. Like, how can your home change with your changing needs? Because that's a good point. This room that we're in
Yeah. Our studio
has been our adaptability of our house.
Yeah. This has been our private space.
It's been a lot of things.
Yeah.
So when we moved into this house, because we don't have enough space for everyone to have their own bedroom by any shot.
No.
And we used to rent out our basement to students. So we really only had, and I forget what our square footage is, but in our area, it's on the low end,
Yeah.
and again, it's contextual.
Yeah.
In places in Europe, they would consider this a larger house, but we didn't have a lot of private space. And when we moved into this house, this room was our new baby's nursery on half of it, and it's a small room. And the other half was our office, where we had, a printer and a desk and our office supplies. And so it did dual duty then. And then it's morphed from a, completely dedicated office to, it was Annika's room, the one girl's private room.
We've talked about this being pink.
It was pink.
It was pink.
What else has it been? It's been a guest room, which it was then sort of combined with an office then too. It's now our own podcast studio and your hideaway.
It is. It's also my den. So this is where I would come and watch football, and people would be like, "Where's Dad?" And then pretty soon there were 6 people in here watching. It was
this
like,
is a nice quiet space. I'm going to join you here.
And I had to kind of deal with the internal of like, I want you all out of here. And yet it was...
Which doesn't happen often for you.
No.
So it shows the state that we were in when we were sharing space that you needed to retreat.
Solitary time.
That's not the norm for you.
More people, the better.
So the adaptability of a house, and people go through different stages of life when maybe their family is changing size. Maybe when you start to have children, you need more space. When the children leave home, you need to sort of not be managing a big space.
Yep.
And then in between, if there's times in your life when you're hosting family events, there's times in your life where you're traveling more, your home needs need to change.
Yeah. And so that might be adapting to the family home, or it might be downsizing. I mean, you hear a lot in the States here, downsizing or finding a condo so you don't have to do yard work and shovel.
We have friends at our stage of life who've done that. They don't want to, have the responsibility of all the things in a home, and they downsize to a house that, or an apartment or a condo.
All of these levels. So it's been nice to read this study because it helps give words to all the decisions we make and what is implicitly working underneath that. And there's opportunity to be happy wherever you are. If you think about how are you creating spaciousness even a little bit? How are you adapting to what the needs are based on the configuration that you have? The sad thing about this studio is we don't have a guest room the exact same way. And so hospitality changes a little bit.
Yeah, you have to kind of give and take.
Yeah. Our hospitality now is we get to talk to all you people.
That's right. Yeah. So for the adaptability too, just to wrap that part up, I feel like for you, sometimes it's even just about what you do with the furniture. Yeah. You love to rearrange furniture.
So good.
And it just gives you a refresh. And also, that's what I was trying to think of something I wanted to say too, is that I don't think that we're saying, or the study is saying, that our homes create happiness.
No.
I think our environment can support our happiness and can create a structure that it's more likely to thrive.
It's a mutual effect that leads to a more likely probability of happiness as an outcome.
There you go.
Would be the scientific way of saying
good.
that.
Yeah. So, but I would say even like times we've done a refresh of moving furniture around, you get a boost like of just something changing, but also
it drives you crazy.
Yeah, I kind of like predictability. I like to know where things are.
Yeah.
And our home is small enough that there's not that many configurations that actually work.
You would be surprised.
I know. You've wanted to go like diagonal with the couch, and I'm like, no, I can't do that.
So you have to negotiate your relationship in addition to playing. But there's a playfulness of like, well, let's just see how it would work. But there's also a steadiness of, no, this is kind of why we landed on this space, and let's keep everything the same. And we've navigated that. A lot of times I move it and then I just get a giggle by your response, and then I move everything back again.
Oh, I see. It's all for the reaction.
So sometimes it's for the reaction.
But we do look back at old pictures sometimes and we realize, we had this completely differently when the kids were little. We had more stuff. We had toys and stuff in the living room.
And there was
So
a racetrack area where they would just run in circles.
yeah,
So
they didn't need a racetrack.
we,
They just ran.
we
Sorry for the renters that lived below us.
that's right. It's remarkably that they ever thought about having kids because we were a handful up here. So
Yeah.
we have that spaciousness and size kind of idea. We have adaptability. This next one, it doesn't sing to my heart, but I get it.
This next one sings so much to my heart.
I just
And
don't
you
understand
can see,
it.
really.
Yeah, no,
So it's about access to nature.
yeah.
The whole next thing, and it's in both studies.
See, the first two things were access to people. That's me.
Yeah.
Access to nature.
I think it matters to you more than you know.
All right, well, fill me in.
So, I mean, one of the huge points that came out is people's access to seeing or being, even if you're not walking in it, seeing that there is an outside world,
Yeah.
seeing nature, seeing trees, hearing birds, being able to either have a garden, a yard in your space, or even if you have an apartment, having a balcony where you can have some plants, see the sky. All of those things matter a lot to and there's a lot of studies on nature's effect on our mental health, our
Well,
well-being.
that's true.
So our homes, having access to it matters a lot.
Yeah.
And they showed that
See, I was, when I read that though, I got distracted by every home needs a garden. And I'm like, I don't garden and I kill things.
You're just thinking about like growing vegetables
Right.
and things.
In your homestead space. But yeah, you're right.
In Europe, a garden is a yard.
Well, yeah, there's that. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
And so, but you're right. Like, I want to be in a space where we can walk, like walking matters and being connected to nature, breathing. Like we walk on the prairie path, we walk in the arboretum, and the oxygen you can smell and feel.
You can see the change in
Yeah.
in the way we feel and the way our face relaxes and when we take a walk outside. And so when you're in a place where you don't really have access to that, it really does affect your mental health and your thriving as a human being. So I bring it in, I've talked about this often enough, but we live in a place where winter kind of shuts down the visible thriving of nature. We lose color and all that, and the access to really being outside when it's super cold.
But honey, it reminds us of the beauty of life because we have to experience death a little bit.
That's okay. We don't need to like convince me that winter's okay.
That's fair.
But in our home, I always have a lot of plants. It matters a lot to me, especially during the winter, to see green.
Yeah.
This poor one that we have in our studio, that we don't get a lot of light in here. It's not looking super healthy, but in our house, I have often got fresh flowers on the table. I've got plants growing, and neither of us is what we'd call a green thumb or really great with helping
keeping
plants.
things alive.
But I think I've gotten better because it really does matter to me.
Yeah.
But it's not just bringing plants indoors. It's also being able to walk outside into a park, having a yard. All of that really is a big factor.
Which gives a different definition of home, right? Home is a base for access to things, not just the space that you live in.
Yeah.
That was the takeaway. And thinking about this being in Northern and throughout Europe, that's very much the space. Home is a launching pad. There's not always a lot of people invited into the home, but you go out and it's the spaces you go out to gather in terms of a park or a square.
Yeah, and Europe is built with more community spaces.
Yeah.
And I think because this study was done in 2019 too, right before COVID, I think one thing that was kind of a good outcome of COVID was that we had to build more outdoor spaces. And so people in the US who are used to very much just kind of isolating in our homes suddenly sort of appreciated meeting outdoors and having meals outdoors and building outdoor spaces. So that really contributes to our sense of well-being.
Yeah. And then so we have spaciousness. We
Adaptability.
have adaptability and gardening.
Access to nature.
Access to nature. And so then the last one from this study was interesting, and I like this the best. It's how do we share? How do we invite people in?
Yeah, so they showed that, not everybody across cultures and not everybody's personality is kind of given to wanting to have people in and hosting and having meals in, but
Yeah.
they've showed that there is, when you feel open to sharing your space with others and when you invite people in, it does
Yeah.
positively impact your happiness
Yeah.
and your happiness just with your home. Like when you share it with others, it increases the good vibes.
Well, and I think it's sharing, right? It's not like a possession, but it's a space to share. Back to what we've been talking about. It's a metaphor for our relationship. So that our hidden space being chaotic is kind of how our internal life is. The same thing of sharing it. There's an openness, a curiosity, involvement, and it can be stressful to invite people over, and yet most of the time we really enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been doing that since we've owned our home, but I think it is a reflection of your life in general. Like I think your home needs to be a place that you can just retreat and
Yeah.
and recharge, but also to feel free to have people inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe we should go to some takeaways from the study, because the study gave us some takeaways about what would be recommendations for doing this. Because I think both this Good Home study report and the Happy Home, I think we covered most of the research. And if you want, we'll have links for that in the show
We will.
notes, so you can read the research on your own. It is a fun read. It's really accessible.
Yeah, and they're pretty much, the findings are very similar, which isn't surprising, but I think the Happy Home one is talking a lot more about intentional design and not just the home itself, but the community, because it's talking about row houses. So how close you are to people, how you have community space, how much you hear other people,
Yeah.
and designing a space that creates a community and identity and like a safe space. So, I mean, the things that we can do, the takeaways are really, we've kind of been already talking
Building
about
them
with
in.
those things, but we can always rearrange the space that we do have. I mean, I think a lot of people live in anticipation of, oh, maybe I can afford a bigger house or when I move. And sometimes that's necessary.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot we can do with whatever space we already have.
Yeah, and I think that's the tension, right? Because we fantasized about, if we had more space, we could do different types of hospitality and all of that. And what hospitality can we do in the space that we have?
Yeah.
So living in both those tensions, and you've done an amazing job at. We're going to have a dozen students over coming up tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll be cleaning after this.
Well, and it's really about the space, because we don't have a big dining room or a big living room. And so it can feel intimidating. We look around and go, okay, there's only this many chairs. But what we found, we've had large groups in.
Yeah,
And
they
the
don't
larger the
care.
group, the more cramped they are, the more happy they seem to be with the get together.
Yeah.
Like they all just sit on the floor, they sit wherever.
They
and
don't care. They're having a great time. It's
so
remarkable.
their memory isn't whether the baseboards were dusted or whether there was a comfy chair for everyone. The memory is that it felt good being together.
Yeah, and especially for college students, right? Of being in a home versus being in a dorm, and being with older adults, and being cared for. All of that matters more. The home is the space, the structure to be able to do that, and yeah, it would be more comfortable.
Yeah.
If there was more space, but we don't have that. And so we make do, and you do an amazing job. But that's the thing that we want to encourage people is, don't turn away from sharing and inviting and being in, getting caught in a sense of ours isn't the same as, and then fill in the blank, but
Right.
How do you make do? So we want to challenge you to, how do you make do with what you have that's going to be fulfilling for you and others?
Yeah. I would say, yes. Around here, especially, I
Yeah.
think comparison is the thief of joy. Somebody said that. I
Oh,
forget
that's great.
who
Let's just say
attribute-
Tara
No,
said that.
I didn't come up with that, but it's this, the
Yeah.
same idea, that when we compare what we have to others, it can really freeze us or make us feel like ours isn't good enough to share. And also waiting for perfection. And I'm guilty of this because Sometimes I feel reluctant to have people over until I have everything perfectly in order. And because we feel that it is a reflection of who we are and how we're doing.
Yeah.
But, when we let go of that,
Yeah.
it really is fun to have people in, and they don't care as much as you think they do, or judge you on what you think is clutter or, not updated. My kitchen has not been updated. We moved in
Since
19
1950.
Right. I think
Yeah.
it's the original kitchen, and we do a lot of cooking in the kitchen. It's not
Mhm.
a neglected room in the house, but we've just not prioritized updating that,
Nope.
because when we have money to spend, we travel or,
Yeah. We prioritize other things, and we can still use it for
we
hospitality.
still use it
Yeah.
a
Feed.
lot.
We feed an army.
Yes.
So
However, it does, one of the recommendations from the study, they did say that updating and improving does increase your
I was
happiness.
hoping you didn't see that part.
Yeah. Yeah. And I understand that because it's part of the pride thing. It's like, oh, I did that.
Yeah.
It looked this way. And our kids who just moved into a house
Both of them, both
nearby
kids.
us. Yes. Both of our kids have felt good when they make it their own and they fix something up, and we can see that.
Yeah.
It does feel like, a little sense of accomplishment and putting your own stamp on a place.
And having a sense of comfort there. Yeah, I'm excited. Our kids were talking about inviting people over for small group to their home, and now they get to be that space where they didn't have it for a long time. So it's really that makes me happy too, that they're going to be able to use their home for happiness.
Yeah.
And connection. So the recommendations, we've talked about this, but create a space for privacy. So we've been talking about hospitality, but there's also a need for a respite, a little space. It doesn't mean like your home is your castle, that kind of thing, that you have to protect it from outside invaders. But where's a space for you just to be comfortable being you, without any of that pressure of I have to clean or it needs to be looking some certain way.
For me, internal doors are helpful.
Yes. Our home does have bathroom doors. But yeah, so what does that look like and where do you create it? And it might be at different times. Like we said, this was my privacy space for a little season. And now it's not. And we have other space. But where is that for you? And that's something that's going to be important.
So create that space. Yeah. Include greenery. Greenery
okay.
matters.
Yeah, okay. I'll accept that.
And then personalizing and putting your stamp on it. So whether that's just, the artwork that you have around you, the furniture you choose, things that you feel reflect you. And in the structural study, they talked about the local identity as well as your identity in your home.
Yeah.
Your identity, your sense of belonging to your community. So getting to know your neighbors is actually, and getting to know the history of your place, knowing how to walk to places if you can. Not every place is like that, but walking your neighborhood.
Yeah. Well, and even like moving in, or at various holiday times across the year, you can do things in terms of social connection. You bake really well. And so it's cookies and a little note, or it's an invitation to play and to relate. And so we can feel like, I don't know my neighbors. Okay. So then my question is, what are we doing to get to know our neighbors?
Right. If we're waiting for them to come meet us, it's not going to happen.
And they're waiting for us to come meet them. Everybody's waiting and nobody's relating.
Ooh, that's a good quote.
Yeah. Well, that's by David. That's by David.
That's
Van
by
Dyke.
David Van Dyke.
Yeah.
Yeah. So make the initiative to get to know the people around you. It makes you feel more connected to your space. It also, I think, increases your safety. When we know our neighbors, they let us know if they see anything that looks sketchy.
Yeah. Well,
or,
and they let us know that they know. So like when I wash my car, they know my dad's coming.
Right.
You're known. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I think here in the States, different than Europe, we've become so isolated. COVID has just ramped that up, that we do our own things. We're such a car-based society that our network is going to be farther afield from our
Yeah.
home than in our neighborhood. And we made life choices about trying to reduce the fragmentation of our life to be this kind of shared identity through proximity. Hey, that's another good one. Shared identity through proximity.
Yeah.
That we wanted our school, our church, our social life to try to be in a parameter around our home that leads to being known rather than, oh, my church is 30 miles that way, my school is 30 miles that way,
Right.
and my work is another way. And so there's just fragmentation, because I don't think that leads to happiness.
Yeah.
It
It
does lead
didn't
to safety. Right. None of my people are going to know the other people. And so I can kind of be different things in different places.
That's a different kind of safety.
Right. But when
Yeah.
everybody knows everything, that can be overwhelming, and yet it can be comfort.
Yeah.
So I interrupted you. Sorry.
No.
Different type of safety.
Different. Yeah. I was just thinking about that. I was surprised that you called that safety.
Yeah.
Having different places to live, but we did try to defragment. Is that a word? Defragmentize?
Defrag. I mean, you talk about defragging a computer. So let's just say we
at
defrag.
a time, we found that our life was very, we had different directions. We were going for different things and quite a distance we had to travel for different things. And that was overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because then you feel reluctant to, oh, do we have to go to that tonight because we have to drive 30 minutes? And, we had different circles of social connection, but they didn't overlap.
Yeah.
And it really it made our life more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And so we made very intentional choices to try to look within a certain distance radius sort of around our house for the things we would connect to. And our church is walkable to us.
Work is walkable.
Your work, our kids' schools, the places I rented an office, the places I shop, all of that we're trying to keep much closer to home. We're trying to walk when we go out for dinner, not drive. And it's not possible everywhere, but it became an important part of us feeling less disconnected.
Yeah. And now, for full disclosure, we also like driving to very small towns away from where everybody knows us to go for dinner dates. Because that's the privacy, right?
Yeah.
So like when our community is all here, then we have to have certain spaces, just like your house needs certain spaces for privacy. We look for unique places to eat where it can just be us and not have to talk to people.
Not have to connect.
Not have to
And that
connect.
goes to the house thing too. You have to have places for privacy and places for community, communal gatherings. And so it's similar in our neighborhoods.
Yep.
Like we want to be known. We want to know who our neighbors are, know who's around us, but also have places we can go when we want to take a quiet walk.
Yeah. So this is kind of, I don't know if there's any other, I'm looking here. I think we covered most of the recommendations.
Yeah, I think that was plenty of food for thought.
Yeah. And hopefully you have some interesting ideas about your home, how you're using it, the structure of it, bringing in green things, all of it that leads to a sense of what they call happiness. I think about it as flourishing. There's a sense of comfort, safety, identity there. That's the human flourishing, that the structural space. So the last thing, being a systems thinker, there's what's going on for me in my emotions, my thoughts, but also my body and relationship to others, but also to the larger structures, whether it's an organization or a physical house. And so I think this is congruent with our ideas of how relationships and our relationship with our house has an effect on the environment, our relationships with each other, and our own emotional well-being.
Yeah. Well, here's to our happy home.